Adoptive parents who returned their child. What was your recent story? I had a neighbor named Melissa. She was about my age 8ish and her brother was slightly older, Giovanni. I remember when they moved in, because her baby brother was named Kermit, and I thought that was extremely bizarre. She was eccentric to say the least. My mom let her come over pretty much whenever she wanted during the summer, because she always seemed to be ignored by her parents. Giovanni used to come over too, but I remember he would leave a lot to go run errands with his parents or for dinner. Whenever I asked her if she had to go, she said she couldn't eat what they could or go with them anywhere. They basically shushed her out of the house. It was concerning, so I told my parents. My mom tried making friends with her mom several times, but the woman was just cold. Anyway, turns out Melissa was adopted. I'm not sure how my mom found out, but I remember coming home from school one day and Melissa wasn't there. She normally waited outside of my house. A week or more went by, still didn't come over. Our neighborhood was very gossipy, but someone found out that they gave her back because she was chatty and they originally wanted all boys. Her family moved out shortly after this. I have an ex-girlfriend, let's call her Rosie, around 2008, both 14 at time, who both her and her infant sister were in foster care. Shortly into our relationship, a couple with a 6-year-old boy decided they wanted another child, but didn't want to undergo childbirth again. So what they did was adopt her sister and gave Rosie a short time to live with them as a foster child to see if she would fit into the family. Understandable. They kept her around for 2 weeks and said no because their BO son wanted to be the oldest. Now she hasn't gotten to see her sister in 2 years. I hate that family. She only had to be there for 4 years if that. And to let a 6 years reasoning keep you from keeping 2 sisters together and then not letting one see the other is just sick. From what I've read, this happens more commonly with children adopted from Russia. People want white kids. They get white kids with fetal alcohol syndrome, profound socialization problems and disabilities. They are kids who require a tremendous amount of therapy, patience, time and money. I don't know if this is still an issue, but in the 80s 90s it was in the news. People would put toddlers alone on flights back to Russia. I have a friend who was adopted from Russia, and aside from being a little behind in school, he is a normal kid. His parents couldn't have children, so they flew to Russia to adopt a 4-year-old girl, him 2 years old, and his biological sister 3 years old. Well, when they got to the care facility, they go to pick up all the kids, who were all in separate rooms. They get my friend and his non-biological sister, but for some reason they won't let them see the biological sister. The parents spend the night there, expecting that the next morning that they'll get to see their daughter. Finally, the caretakers bring them to the little girl. When the girl saw them, she started throwing her toys, punching people, screaming, pulling her hair out, just going crazy. They decided not to adopt her. The mother told me she now regrets it. She believes the orphanage told the girl to act that way because another family might have offered more money. The whole trip there was suspicious, she told me, and that if she had a choice she would have demanded to adopt her anyways. Edit. Oh my god. I just remembered another family who gave up their daughter. I went to elementary school with this quiet kid named Daniel. He had really bad speech problems, but the only thing I ever heard him clearly say was how excited he was about his new adopted sister. Now, honestly, I didn't like Daniel. He was annoying and smelled bad. But my friend, let's call her Kathy, was his best friend. They spent all their time together, and she regularly visited his house. In the beginning of 4th grade, Daniel's family adopts this adorable little girl. She was really shy and couldn't speak English. Halfway through our 4th grade year though, Daniel stops coming to his school. I talked to Kathy and she told me that his family wouldn't answer the phone. Kathy and her mother eventually go to Daniel's house to see what's up. His mom tells them that they returned their daughter because she was trouble and too immature. Daniel and his family moved away after that. I have no idea why they would have given up their 4-year-old daughter. I know adoptive children have a tendency to have issues, but giving up a tiny child who needs your help sounds selfish. I used to work in children's services and knew a few kids who were returned. I actually agreed with the parents in some of those cases. In a couple of cases the parents really shouldn't have adopted a kid that was known to be troubled. In one of them, they found out their adopted son, who had been very badly abused himself, was doing the same to his sister, and there was indications that he was doing it to their twin toddlers. They actually remained involved in his life. After he was placed in the care of state, they still cared about him, but didn't feel the other kids in the house were safe. Another boy's family decided to return him to the care of the state when one day they came home to find he shattered the toilet with a hammer and was caught doing it with the family dog. He also creeped out the couple's teenage daughter to the point where she was threatening to run away to get away from him. To our knowledge, he never did anything to her. I knew of a few others, but those two stood out the most. Bear in mind that I also worked with very disturbed boys, so I didn't meet the kids that were returned because the parents were crazy. One of the sadder ones to me was a kid who had been abused in every way possible, and a kind but very naive couple adopted him. They didn't listen to any advice we tried to give them because they knew that love conquers all, and figured that if they were just nice enough he would be all better in a few months or maybe a year. They thought at the high end, after 2 years he would be a normal kid. They weren't prepared for his baggage at all. My understanding was that he did get better after some years with them, but after a while they just gave up and gave him back. It destroyed him, and any progress he made vanished. My cousin was adopted twice. Her first adoptive family decided that they just didn't want to be parents anymore. After having her for 3 years, she was friends with my cousin, so my aunt took her in and adopted her. She's all grown up now and a beautiful, happy woman. My parents joke all the time they are going to return me. Jokes on them. I'm 30 now, but really, my parents love me, and I've never, ever saw them as anything but my mum and dad. Though my dad said the other day, if I get a DNA test and I'm not 100% Korean, he wants his money back. He paid for a Korean, and he wants a Korean, not a hybrid. I was adopted when I was 10. I wasn't given back, but it was bad. I just came to say, you need to be a really caring person if you're gonna adopt any kid older than a baby. I was ripped from my family and thrown in with a woman who thought to completely change me instead of accepting me for who I was. I got PTSD from the day I was given to my adoptive family. Severe self-hatred because I've never lived up to the standards set by my adoptive mother, and crazy attachment issues. If I had just had someone adopt me who could have said, hey, that shit was ducked up, so we know you're gonna need a lot of time to adjust, that's cool. We are here to care for you. At 10 years old, you're already getting a sense of who you are, so we can't really change that. We can only guide you out of trouble the best we can. You don't have to call us dad or mom, you already have those. We're not here to replace them. We are here to give you the stability that they couldn't. But now the damage is done. I'm 27. I have almost 2 decades of pent-up shit I now have to get rid of. So if you're gonna adopt an older kid, don't expect them to be grateful. Don't expect them to love you right away. Don't expect them to be perfect. They will argue. They will get in trouble. They will scream at you that you are not their real parents. Take it all in stride. Don't overreact. This is a process for adjusting. This is what you signed up for. My adoptive mother, when we would get into arguments, would yell at me, fine. Do you wanna go back and live with your father? It cut like a knife. This was the first home I'd ever been in for longer than 2 years since I was born. She threatened to take away the only place I'd ever had any stability. Don't ever do that to a kid. You have no idea the kind of damage you can inflict on a kid like that. Threatening to return an adopted kid is like threatening divorce to your spouse when you're in a fight. There's gotta be a line you don't cross. My chemistry teacher in high school did this. She was unable to bear children for whatever reason, so she looked into adoption. She was obviously very excited and shared the news with her students. There was a very young mother, like a pregnant teenager, who was looking to give her child to her. After she was born, she brought in pictures of her new daughter to class, and we spent the first couple of minutes sharing that moment before we returned to balancing equations and other chemistry stuff. Well, It turns out that in the adoption process, the birth mother has something like 60 days to change her mind, annul the contract, and ask for her child back, something which both parties sign off on. On day 59, the birth mother changes her mind, insists that she wants her kid now. So my teacher had to return her daughter. The next day, she came to school as composed as one can be after such a traumatic event. But we all could tell she obviously had been crying before she started her lecture and barely made it through the period without breaking down and running away in class. I don't want to vilify the birth mother too much, but she really did wait until almost the last minute to change her mind, and my teacher surely thought this was all but a done deal. I can't imagine the heartbreak at returning home to an empty crib. My roommate in college was born in South America, Venezuela I believe. There was an incident shortly after birth that left her blind. She was put up for adoption. I don't know if it had anything to do with her being blind, and was later adopted by an American family. The family put her through surgery to correct her vision problem. When the doctors told them that they were unable to fix her problem and that it likely couldn't be fixed, they put her up for adoption again. She was later adopted by a woman who herself was blind, so I guess things worked out for her. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.